Hello and welcome to my channel. This is Darcy's Misadventures with Mixed Media. First, I need to start out by apologizing for Saturday's video where I kept saying oxides, but I really meant distress spray stains. That's all I used, was distress spray stains. I did not use any oxides that day. And before I start everything else, I'll just go through real quick, the difference between an oxide and a spray stain. As you can see, even just by looking at the bottles, one is transparent. If I put ink under there, it would make more sense. And what I mean is, if I would put a stamp under there, or writing or something, then you could see that better. So, whoops. Alright, way to go. Alright, let's go ahead and do that. And so it's fair. We'll do fresh ink on that. This is Eddie's stamp. PM Artist Studio. Eddie makes art. Okay, so the spray stains are the same thing that is in the Distress ink pads, except for it's in a spray form. And let's see, let me get a different, only because this one doesn't show up real great, the speckled egg, so we'll do a little bit of the saltwater taffy and speckled egg together. Sure, why not? So everything is really clear there because of how the oxides work. I mean, see, I still do it every dang time. The sprays, distress sprays. The distress oxides, however, are, whoops, you can still, well, actually, the ink kind of resists it a little bit, but they are more, they're more opaque. Can't see through them as much. You can see that some of this is actually covering up some of that black ink, but I think the ink also kind of works as a resist, maybe, I don't know. It changed the color of the ink a little bit. So hopefully you can see that, and let me dry these real quick. And then, like I talked about yesterday, they're both water soluble, which means they move with water if you have water. My water bottle is practically empty. Let's try this one. Just want some water, that's all. Let's see. We'll do some big blops so you can see it really well. Go over this a little bit in yesterday's video as well. So you can just let that sit for a minute. So water soluble just means that water is going to affect the medium that you put down. The medium being the distress oxide sprays down here and the distress spray stains up here. Spray stains are distress inks in spray form. Distress oxide sprays are, oh my goodness, they're over here. Distress oxide pads in spray form. They're the same ingredients for each, just in a different form. So I do not have a paper towel. Why would I have a paper towel? And these are not super absorbent for this, but let's go ahead and get some of that water up. And you can see the color on the towel coming through of the color. That is because it reacted with the water and is coming up off the page with the water. Alright, let me dry these real quick. So you can see a little bit about how that changed with the water that was there, and a little bit how that changed with the water that was there. It's not as apparent like on this kind of paper as it would be like on mixed media paper or watercolor paper, like a thicker paper. So this is not what I was planning to do today, but we'll explain some things today. I have one color where I have all the things. I think that gives you an idea of what my favorite colors might be, and that's Uncharted Mariner. I have the Distress ink pad, the Distress oxide pad, the spray stain, and the oxide spray. So these might be the best ones to show the differences, because there are differences in color as well. And then I also have some papers. I've got some black cardstock, some cream cardstock, some white cardstock, some watercolor paper, which is 140 pound. Well, let's skip those. Let's find a blank one. So let's go ahead and tear that off. Feels like there's two there, but there's not. And whoops. The other one is I have got some mixed media paper that is 98 pounds, and that's by Grumbacher. And I can easily tell the difference, one, because of the weight, and two, because the mixed media paper is smooth and the watercolor is, okay, come on. Oh, I can just take them out like that. This is the one that you can take them out and put them back in. I usually don't spend a lot of money on these for like tags and, you know, for junk journals and whatnot. Although I do have a few that are more expensive ones that I have, but you know, when I'm showing you guys things, I want to show you the things that are a little more accessible to you, price range wise. And I couldn't even tell you for sure which one this is. It's either from Hobby Lobby or Michael's. I'm not sure which one. Same with the other. But they're, you know, probably around the 60 pound range for that paper. This is my watercolor paper. This is my mixed media paper. Okay. So let's just go ahead and get some stamps. I'm going to use different stamps for, right here, we'll do these two maybe. I just want to get some of the ink off of that. Still some ink on those too. Well, these hold a lot of ink, just saying. And the last ink I used on these was the VersaFine Clear. With this one. We'll have some nice backing paper here, won't we? Alright, so one of these I will use for the inks and one I will use for the oxides so that they don't mix too much. So on black paper, and this will show more if I was using a lighter color, so I may also use a lighter color to demonstrate this part. So remember I said the oxides are more opaque. So when I stamp that onto black paper, it shows up some. When I stamp the ink, the Distress ink, onto black paper, you just barely see it. I mean, you can see it a little bit if you look really hard, but the blue, and you can see they're different colors as well. So let's go ahead and stamp these on each of the papers, and then we'll also do some sprays. Now you don't have to buy the sprays. You can use your pads like you do a spray. A little bit of the brown came through on there, but that's okay. And if you're wondering about these stamps, these are actually my design that are sold at pmartiststudio.com. There's always a link in my description box with a coupon code. So they don't look too different on the mixed media paper. Partly that, I'm not sure why. I did the right, yeah, this is the oxide one. Might not have got as much ink on there. Might need to do it again. I'm just pressing firmly with purpose, as Tim Holt says. Speaking of Tim Holtz, these are his colors. I mean, they're not his pads. I didn't go steal them from his studio. Although sometimes don't you wish you could just go play in his studio with all that stuff? Oh my goodness. Most everybody has heard of Tim Holtz. So there's a slight difference in color. This one's a little bit darker than this one. You can see it here too a little bit. But because I've got that pine cone of the VersaFine on there still, it's kind of messed it up a little bit. But these weren't brand new stamps anymore. I could have gone and washed them, yeah. I could have. I'm not a clean your stamps kind of gal. I'm a get what you get kind of gal. So that's the oxide. I know this part probably feels a little tedious. If you want to fast forward, I'll try to remember to show them all again. And so ink, Distress ink, Distress Oxide. Keep those there. And the last one. And also, I want to do, I should have done these higher or lower, but that's alright. Don't mix them up. Okay, so that's what they all look like that. Now, another thing you can do, which is going to give you a different look, is, where's my water? I should have filled my other water bottle. You can spray the stamp a little bit, and it will give you like more of a blurred effect. And that's like the ghost print of it. And then let's also try that on the mixed media in the watercolor. Oops. And here's the ghost print. So some of it got wet, some of it didn't. And then we'll just do the very last bit of it on there, because we want to see what it does on everything, right? Okay, now let's go back through and do the same thing with the oxide. I'm trying to spray off to the side too, so I'm not spraying it like directly on the paper. And you can see what happens when you spray that too. It almost becomes like watercolor or whatever, but it's definitely, let's see, it's definitely what? I don't know what it's definitely. Didn't get on there quite as, and there's the ghost print. Let me just get that a little bit dry before I add oxide onto there. You don't really want to get your oxide pads, you don't really want to get water on those. I forget why. If someone knows, it can tell me in the, that's a lot of water. It's a lot of water. Okay. So there's that. I was going the other direction before, so I didn't have to worry about this before. And there's the ghost print. Ooh, that got a good ghost print on that one, didn't it? Clean off some of the water. I mean, you don't have to do that necessarily with the Distress ink. It's not going to mess up your pad. I forgot to spray it, didn't I? Well, let's do that again. You're doing a process, Darcy. Come on. Do the process right for everything. Maybe not spray water on your heat dryer. Might be smart. There we go. Alright. So these will dry a little bit. Let's also spray the ones that are already down here. Okay, I gotta get water. You can use any spray bottle when you do this. There's no right or wrong spray bottle. This one is a fine mist spray bottle. This one is the Tim Holtz one. What's nice about this one is if you just spray just a little tiny bit, it'll give me bigger drops than if I spray it full on. So this is what happens when you, let me see if I can put these to the side, let them dry a little. No, let's go ahead. I want to dry them each individually, I think. I'll pause. I won't make you listen to that. So that's the white cardstock sprayed a little bit and at least mostly dried. Let's go ahead and spray these. I'm just spraying the ones that were put on here normal. Kind of doing little sprays and big sprays. And here this is partially dry. So this is when you wet the stamp first, and then this is when you wet it. That didn't get much wet though. I did not get it on there very well, did I? There we go. Same with this one. Let's do a little bit more. The more you wet it, the more things will happen to it. And you could dry it with the dryer. You could let it sit for a minute, and then you could take your paper towels if you have any. I don't have any. I don't know where they are. So you could just take something and just get, most of the wet off. I know Artie Mays, Andrea Artie Mays, she kind of takes her roll of paper towels and rolls it over. Paper towels are more absorbent. I do have paper towels upstairs. We'll go get them. Paper towels or kitchen roll if you're in the UK, and my Aussie friends will have to tell me what they call it. Might be kitchen roll. I'm not sure. So that's much more absorbent and will be nicer for me. All right, I'm gonna set that aside to dry. I don't want to have to, I already, the last time I paused before getting the paper towels, I pressed the wrong button. I hate when I do that. So this is the watercolor paper. And these are the ones that I did first. So the watercolor paper reacts differently when you spray on it. Did you see that? Like it runs into the paper because it's watercolor paper, and that's, you know, what it's meant to do. So, you know, you want to experiment with different papers and different inks. Today I'm just going over, I don't really know much about like the Seth After inks and the Dilutions inks. I know the most about the Tim Holtz ones. There's obviously a little bit of pink in this because some pink got picked up when I picked that up with the paper towel. And the mixed media paper. Now, if you want to remember that the ink we had on there first, that brown part you see is actually permanent ink. It shouldn't move. But the mixed media paper also, the ink moves a little bit more there than it did on the cardstocks. So you can use cardstock with inks, but you're not going to have as fun results as when you use mixed media paper and watercolor paper. So there's a reason you get the special paper. So, you know, you see little bits of blue going off on there. And then you won't see as much happen on this, maybe. I don't know. Or it might just even become, let's see. Smooth. Yeah, because it's also cardstock, so it doesn't move quite as much. So, seems like it got whiter, though, when I added water. Alright, now let's go back to the beginning. We've got the cream cardstock, and let's try the sprays. So, this is the spray stain, which I kept calling oxides yesterday, and it was not. And here is the oxide spray. Alright, let's do a couple sprays of each so that we can have something left to look at. All right, set those aside to dry. And you could see the difference in opacity with the sprays, especially. Don't forget where you put these. And then this is the cardstock. And you can see the difference in color. That the spray is darker than the oxide, and they do dry lighter, which we'll also see. Is this the right one? Did I turn this upside down? I don't know. Oh wait, nope, this is the right way. This is why you use two different stamps, so that you can tell which one is which. And that was the watercolor paper, and this is the mixed media paper. Okay, so I'm going to dry these real quick and I'll be right back. Alright, as I'm drying these, I realize I probably want to spray one of my blobs, because that's going to make it different if you spray it while it's wet than when it dries. And you do want to see, you know, the difference there. So that one was sprayed with water, that one wasn't. So the outside ones will be sprayed with water. Let me just do that real quick with all these before they dry. Guess the outside is going to mean the bottom there. Kind of let it drizzle down a little bit. And these two. Covered up my spray bottle. That doesn't help. The cardstock absorbs it much more quickly, I think. Even though they've been sitting a minute longer, they still, the ink especially, just kind of doesn't move so much. So, you know, if you want to do something with black, you definitely, that's where you use your oxides, because that's where they shine. All right, be right back. Let me dry these. Okay, so here is the mixed media paper, the watercolor paper, the white cardstock, the black cardstock, and the cream cardstock. Now you might be able to see already that the cardstock warps quite a bit more than even the mixed media paper and the watercolor paper. They all warp, but these warp even more. Just saying. All right, now let's go ahead and bring our stamps back for a minute and see what happens when we stamp some Distress Oxide over the ink spray or the Distress ink over the oxide sprays. So you don't see either one real clearly, but you do see a little bit of a difference because of how they were applied, with there being some watered, you know, when you add water, you're going to get a different version as well. Plus the sprays and oxides are not exact. They apply differently. When you use a stamp, it applies differently than if you don't. This is the one for the ink. The ink is on the left, and I'm putting that here. And this is the stamp I'm using with the oxide. Also, the watercolor paper, it has, you know, more texture on it, so you're not going to get a smooth stamp like you might on the mixed media paper. So that's like that. And then we'll do it on these as well, if I can remember. If I can keep track of what I'm doing. Okay, so this oxide is going over here. And this ink is going over here. So yeah, it stamps better. It stamps better on this paper. I'll give it that. All right, the oxide is, that's where my ink is there. I don't know if you can tell or not, but that's where it is. And so now, presumably, this will show up more because it has the blue as its backing. It does a little bit. This is the ink. Okay, trying to pay attention. The ink is going over the oxide. Okay, this is really hard for me. Just saying, to keep it all straight and also to say the right words. That's also like really hard. All right, put my covers on. Oh, and I mean, I'm sure I showed you that the pads themselves also look different in color, because I believe that the oxides were they basically have picket fence added to them. Picket fence is like the white. Where is it? And so, and it says it's a distress stain. It doesn't come as an oxide. It just comes as a stain. But it's like it's the bridge between the two, as far as I know. In fact, we can spray a little bit of. No, we can't. Oh, whoa! It wants to. Let's add some water too. All right. So it's gonna wick up some of the blue on both of these probably. And we'll let that sit for a minute. Should we do that on all of them? Well, that one came out differently, didn't it? Added some more water to, so we're going to add a little picket fence and a little water to each one. Or a lot of water, I don't know. It's whatever my finger feels like doing at the moment. So yeah, you just play with inks, whether they are sprays or your pads. It could be the mini pads. The mini pads are like the least expensive way to get the different colors you want, or you can focus on the colors you want and get the sprays. I usually get my sprays on Etsy. There's, if I can remember the name of the shop, I'll try to find it. But they're about $7 or so in the United States for each. Sometimes you can get like a lot of them, for a lower price per, but you can't pick your colors. You know, you gotta take whatever they give you. All right, let me dry all these. So I think you can see in some of these that the white has wicked up the blue quite a bit. And on this especially, you can see why I say that the white is, even though it says right here, spray stain, it's more opaque like an oxide. Like I said, it's both. It's where oxides started, basically. If I listen to Tim correctly. I don't always watch him, but when I do, I try to pay attention. So, you can see where the white is there. You can not see it as much over here. It absorbed quite a bit. And then here, not quite so much either. You can see a little bit. You can see where it gets a little bit lighter in there. How about here? Can we see it? Yeah, we can see some spots where it got a little bit lighter here. And here's where the white spray was there. And can't see it quite as well here. And then I think this must be where the water drops hit. And so let's just do some water now on these bits here, so you can see what happens with that. I'm going to just leave it for a second. And then we're just going to pick it up with our paper towel. And you can see the mottling, M-O-T-T-L-I-N-G, I think is how you spell that. So it picked up some of the pigment on there, and it'll do like that on all of them. And you'll get a different effect whether you, the longer you leave it, and also if you let it air dry, or you use the heat, or you use a paper towel. That's going to change the look you get every time on any paper, I believe. I think. So you can see where it picked up the color. You can also see on here where it picks up the color. And let's get some big drops on there. Leave it for a minute. Give this one a fair chance. I don't think it does it quite as well on cardstock as it does the mixed media paper and the watercolor paper. But we're going to give it a fair chance and leave it for, because it soaks into the paper so quickly, I think is why. Because you'll see when I do this, not as much color comes up. And so you're not going to get those effects as much on cardstock as you do on the mixed media paper and the watercolor paper, because it just absorbs into the paper so quickly that it just doesn't do the same thing. Like, let me get a new paper towel so you can see. See, nothing, even that water that was there, it didn't pick up blue because it wasn't on the blue. So yeah, my suggestion is when you're gonna play with your inks, cardstock's not your, unless you want to gesso it. Gesso's gonna give you a whole, gesso changes everything. Just so you know, what is gesso? Because this is for beginners, right? Gesso is a primer. I got this like in 2019, and it's 20. I still have it, and I use gesso quite a bit. I had a smaller one too, so this isn't the only one, but it's still like half full. It's a thick white primer that seals, stiffens, and provides surface tooth for painting surfaces for use with acrylic, oil, casein, tempera, and other paint media. And then, you know, it's gonna. You want me to, I'm not going to do that on all the papers. I'm just going to do this on the, well, no, actually, you should do it on some cardstock so you can see. Let's do it on the white cardstock. So you can actually see there's quite a difference when you use gesso. All right, let's find a brush. Doesn't have to be a fancy brush. Do need to find a place to put some gesso, though. Let's just, here's good. I have, the container I was using got too glumpy, so I need to find a container to put some that I can use once in a while, is what I need to do. There we go. So this is a little bit thick, not super thick gesso, but it's a little on the thick side. I had some that was thicker, or at least got thicker over time. All right. So let's just do a good thick thinnish layer. So a thin layer there. Also, I want to show you what happens when you put it over the inks. And then I kind of wanted to do it a little bit thicker and I don't know. Let me just put some here and there. That's really thin there. It's a little thicker in the middle. Let's just coat this corner over here. Alright, so let that dry for a minute. Let's go ahead and do that with our mixed media paper and watercolor paper too. Do a nice thick coat right here. Do kind of a thinner coat there. Kind of come over them here. You're going to see that because the inks are water soluble, the color is coming up through the gesso. So hopefully you can see that. That's another thing I kind of wanted to demonstrate with the gesso, is that you could use it as an upper layer and it adds some texture. And probably have blue on my brush now. Just need a little bit more here. Yep, it's blue now. I don't want to have to get out more gesso. Alright, we'll let those dry for a minute. Oh, and another thing about gesso, if you apply heat, this is with like all acrylic paints, I think, you can make it bubble up. Like if it gets really, really hot, this is very thick, but it can start to bubble up. There you go, see those bubbles? That's why you don't always want to use the heat gun, unless you're looking for that bubbly texture. So, I should let these just dry. But, you know, if you don't want it to bubble up, just don't go too close. I don't have a lot of distress stains and oxides of the same, like I don't have a lot of oxides. But this one, the Chip Sapphire, I do have both of those. So, let's try that on the gesso. And so, let's see. This corner down here, I'm going to do there and there. And then I'll do, you want to shake your oxides really well. There, whoops. Oops, and there. And it would have made, I want it to go over as well, because I want you to see the difference. So that's both oxide. Now it's all mixed together. It won't really matter, but you'll be able to see what happens when you put it on the gesso. Of course, the more water you add, the more you know, differentiations you're going to have. So the texture of the gesso comes out a bit. Let's just have that go back down. Woo. And you can see the difference between the Chip Sapphire and the Uncharted Mariner. Alright, let me dry this real quick. So you can see it lightened up quite a bit, and that it takes differently on the gesso. So it's lighter on the gesso, darker on the paper. That's the mixed media paper. And let me not mix them so much this time. I have gesso here and here. So, whoops, what do I want? What do I want? What do we want? When do we want it? That's Chip Sapphire. Yep, don't know what that was. I'll do the Chip Sapphire oxide right there. That's the oxide, yep. And the Chip Sapphire spray stain I'll do on that corner. And I will add a little bit of water to both. Oops. Well, lost another cover. And, okay, come on. Dry those real quick. I don't think I had enough gesso on here to show exactly, but also watercolor paper has sizing on it. So it didn't take it, it wasn't as drastic on the watercolor paper as it was on this paper. And then on this one, does anybody remember where it is? There's some in the middle. And there's some up in this corner. So that corner is a lot of oxide. And just add some water. That's not water. Oh my word, what is wrong with me? Do I have any more gesso on here? Yes, I do, right here. Alright, now we'll add water. Oh my word. You can see it absorbs right into the paper and it sits on the gesso a little bit more. Let's just let that drip a little bit. So we'll be able to see. Let me dry that real quick. This being the cardstock. That's mostly dry. But you can see it definitely takes it different on the gesso than it does the paper, which is why you can use gesso as a resist. I did a video a while back where I, use stencils in the gel plate to get, I just use white paint actually. You don't even have to use gesso for a resist. You can use any paint and then use your distress sprays and you get really cool stuff happening. But that's, I'll have to remember to link that. Or I can just show you. We get enough paper, right? I actually prefer paint to gesso when I do this because I don't love, do we care that this is grungy? Maybe not. I don't love how gesso feels on my plate, I guess is what, that is a lot of paint. Oh my word. You don't have to have a gel plate to do the resist. You can just use a little sponge and go through a stencil with some paint onto your paper. In fact, I'll do one each way. How's that? So let me go ahead and just get the innards picked up because I like the stencil design part, the mask part, the part that's going to be masking the paint underneath. That's the design I want. Of course, I could even use this piece. All right, so let's go ahead and get this on here and pick that up. So wherever the paint is, we're going to get a resist. And I'll need to let it dry first, but usually by the time I get it off of here, it's barely wet anyway. So anywhere the paint is, the ink should not pick up. But I have a lot of places where the paint is not super, whatever. Okay, it's fairly dry, even though I haven't paused at all. I'm going to wet it, and I'm going to spray the spray stain on one side and the oxide on the other as soon as I can find it. Alright, I want water too though. That's the chip sapphire. That's the weathered wood. That doesn't help me. That's the Mermaid Lagoon. That's not helpful. Here it is. And I switched sides. Don't know why. Spray some water. Definitely need water for this because you want it to move. I need a little bit more of this. If anyone wants to send me. Alright, and then, and I would actually smush to do this because it just works a little bit better. But I'm just going to go ahead and smush that on my gel plate to get a lot of the excess off. And if, see, it's not, okay, so I think my colors are too close. Let me dry that real quick. Do you want to watch it dry? Cover your ears if you don't like the sound. So definitely where this paint is up here, definitely resisted. It's more dramatic if you use white. I wish I had some on hand. Oh, I could use white for the next, showing it how to do it without a gel plate. But like I said, the inks, as they dry, they lighten. So as the inks lighten, the paint will show up a little bit more. Or I could use a darker color. That also would have worked well. This is subtle. So subtle, it's a secret. And if you don't want it to change your paint color so much, you can do it from the back. I've done that too. It's not scientific experiments. We could do it like that for the next one. I'll find some white paint. Alright, let me grab some white paint over here. And a sponge. A sponge. Is it sponge worthy? Yes, it is. Alright, it's not a clean sponge, but that's okay. We don't have to have it be perfectly perfect. Alright, that's going to keep drying. It's not completely dry. And this one's not in the shop. This half size is in the shop. But Patricia had asked for, Patricia, PM Artist Studio, for like a full size with the smaller. And so I did that, but then I think she forgot about it. So Oh, I don't want to put that on there anyway. Let me get some white paint. You can use white paint, gesso, any color paint. I just want to, and you don't want it too, you just kind of don't want it too thick on your sponge. And then you just dab in there and do that. My thing is a little sticky, my stencil. I'm trying to think what, this is the side of the paint, that's why it doesn't dry as fast on the Yupo. Oh, PM Artist stencil, PM Artist Studio stencils are made from 72 the medium pound Yupo, and they work great on the gel plate. I especially like the big ones. If you're going to use like ink through them with your brush or whatever, you just want to be careful. This one especially has a lot of flippy uppies. But if you're, you know, doing a sponge like this, dabbing it like that, it's not so bad. So you can barely see that, right? Let's see. It's mostly, it's not totally dry, as you can see. Let me just do what? I don't know. Just trying to get some of the excess paint off of there, I guess. All right, mostly dry. So now, I think I was trying to say before, I like to smush it a little bit more. So let's just do some little spray stain on that side and some oxide over on this side. And spray some water. And then I also spray the page. And so this is the spray stain, that's the oxide. So you see how they kind of do a little bit different. And let's go ahead and dry that. Sorry for your ears, but it's kind of fun. It's kind of fun. It does how, I think it's good to see it, see how it dries with the heat gun. And of course you're going to get different effects whether you let it dry, air dry, or use the heat gun. And of course the heat gun, you know, also will move it around. You can see some of the pigment that kind of sits chalk-like in the oxide side. And you can also see how using the white paint is much more dramatic. Also, I got it on there a little bit more than the gel plate did. So that's the one that I did on the gel plate. This is the one doing with the where I did the paint through the stencil with the sponge. So you don't have to have a gel plate to do this. You can just, you know, sponge through a sponge. So get some white paint. That's all you need. Any color paint or gesso, and get your stencils. And it does work best on mixed media paper or watercolor paper, any kind of art paper. I'm not sure how. I think it also work on like the wet strength tissue and rice paper, stuff like that as well. You probably get the most interest on watercolor paper, but for that one you definitely would probably want to use the paint through the stencil with your sponge, because it is bumpy. You know, it has more texture to it. So I think that is pretty much it for now. And of course, oh, let's do one more thing. Let me get a fairly clean stamp so we can try one more thing. And that is just spray your stamp with water. And stamp where your ink is. And what should happen is it should lift. This is, however, the cardstock, so it's not going to do it quite as well. It does a little bit, but that also might be showing some of the ink that was left on there. Yeah, there is still some ink on there. Do I have a stamp I haven't used? No, I use all my stamps. All right, let's try it on the... Oh, you can definitely see it on the mixed media paper. You can see it wicking the water up right there. So that is another thing you can do, is just wet your stamp and use that on your distress inks, your distress oxides, and it will pull the water up. Let's just do it on the watercolor paper. Of course, this just has thin lines, so it's not even going to show up as much as if I was using a boulder stamp. A boulder stamp? Well, this is the closest thing to a boulder stamp I've got. But it's dirty because I use it a lot. See, it's got some oxides on there. You can see them kind of come up. But also, I don't mind that too much. If a little bit of the green gets in there with the water, I'm okay with that too. So there's a boulder stamp and some green getting left on there. And that's all right too. So it'll move the ink that's down there, and some of the color will get left there that was on the stamp. Let's see. So another one. Oh, let's do this. This is the has gesso, and it has but see, I think that effect is cool where you've just got the tiniest bit of ink left on here. So some of it is just water hitting it, and some of it, some ink is hitting it, and it gives a really cool effect just by spraying the water on that and stamping it with water. Please, if you have any questions, put them down below. If you had questions that I answered, please tell me. I would love to know that. And all this happened because I kept saying oxides yesterday when I didn't mean to in Saturday's video. So now we know cardstock is not the greatest with the inks, whether you're using Distress Inks or Distress Oxides, whether you're using the sprays or the pads. And, you know, play with what you've got. If you only have the mini ink pads, then use the mini ink pads. Use them with your stamps, wet them down, you know, use them where you have a piece of glass or acrylic or plastic or whatever you've got. And, you know, you can just do that. And then you spray it. Whether you have oxides or inks or whatever, works great. And then we just do that. And see, it's just cool. So even if you don't have the sprays, you can still play if you have any of the Distress inks. So you can thank the Ranger people and Tim Holtz for having these magical sprays and ink pads to play with. And I hope you all have a delightful day. And like I said, if I've answered some of your questions, please let me know. That would just make me feel so good. And if you have any new questions, I will answer whatever I can, and whatever I don't know the answer to, I'll find out, because that's what I do. I hope you all have a delightful day. I hope you enjoyed this video. Love you guys.